part 2 here. So if Yahushua is in the sky with his Melachim, angel armies, let's say, riding on white horses, well, the word horse is sus, samik vav samik. A fluttering flag is a samik samik. A moth fluttering around a light bulb is also samik samik. So samik samik is the action of, well, horse's feet. Samik samik. That's why they call it a sus, a samik vav samik. Well, what have those angels been doing all these years? They sitting up there just picnicking in the clouds? Oh, it's time to do something. Hey, time to get busy. Okay, let's hop on our Vav Samiks and we're going to do something now. What have they been doing? Well, there's verses that talk about Elohim. You guys don't listen to my words? Back at you. I'm out of here. I wonder if they're going to notice I don't listen to their prayers anymore, that I don't answer their prayers, that I'm not even shining my face on them, and, oh, please turn your face upon us. Like the Aaronic benediction. May his face shine upon you. May his face turn in your direction and give you regard. That's a blessing. That's a request. That's a command because we're Shema'ing Israel. Yeah, what if you're not Israel? What if you're the bride of Christ? See, the interesting thing is that that's a concept, that's a mind, that's a, hey, this is who I am. But it also comes with it the essential Christian doctrine that says you're acceptable because you believe. But to believe is not to do. Because if you do, now you're trusting in your works, and you're supposed to not trust in your works. And I've heard it said, and I've heard it taught, and I've heard it preached and sung about that we can do nothing, we will do nothing. It's completely him, Yeshua's death on the cross. And if I thought that I should do something, that would be me giving value to my own works, which would be an offense to him. Now, there might be 80 different variations of that concept, of that doctrine. We don't think that way. It's like, and I've heard that too. Yahuwah Echad, what does that mean? Thin singularity. No, that's the, if I think of a plumb line, that's a straight line this way. If I think of a tightrope, it's that way. And remember the word Asher or Assyria, Aleph Shin Vav Resh, meant a tightrope dancer. I saw Cirque du Soleil years ago, and wow, man, those guys are incredible. Talk about tightrope dancer, gymnasts like extraordinary. Plus, they had this incredible music they were playing. It's like what a performance of human artistic expression. That's Aleph Shin Vav Resh. And yet, Yahuwah says, I think it was in Hosea there, he was saying, I'm not going to send you back to Egypt. This time you're going to Assyria. And it's like Assyria, well, David had held the Assyrians at bay, and they were a formidable, they were vicious, they were brutal, they were savage. And once David died and Solomon took over, and Solomon allowed the various temples to idolatry, 1,000 different women, wives and concubines, as Solomon allowed his various women to retain their cultures from different places around the world. I think what Solomon was doing is everywhere his ships went all around the world, he would have diplomatic treaties by taking one of the young women of the kings of that area and say, okay, I'll take your woman as a wife, as a concubine, and that'll be this trade deal. Maybe he left a priest of Israel or something with them. You don't know what the exchange was, but okay, we have a deal. We won't go to war with each other. But as it says that Solomon had more and more of these going on, he lost his heart of allegiance toward Yahuwah, and Yahweh allowed 3 different enemies to arise. One of them was up in the northeast, and one was northwest, I think, and another one down south. But I had heard that the Phoenician sailing ships didn't have any Marines. They didn't have a military contingent on board. They had no enemies. They were traders. They would do commerce. They would just go around the world and buying and selling. And there was a certain protection that Yahuwah had placed on David that was handed down, the generational blessing handed to Solomon, but Solomon lost it. Why? How? With tolerance, with religious tolerance, with customs of his foreign wives. So this identity is of who is Yahuwah. See, there's something about the Moedym which he designed. Mem, Vav, Ayin, Dalet. Mem is the prefix letter that means the place, the time, the object, or the tool of use, the occasion, similar to Bet being a prefix letter, or Shin being the prefix letter, that which belongs to. This Mem is the time, the place, the substance of. Vav is a connector, and then Ayin Dalet is the word that means witness or testimony, but it also means until, like a process in time, and it also means booty or something like a treasure that can be stolen. So if somebody says, I'm going to give you a treasure, here's a field. How do you pick up and run with a field? Well, somebody else can legally buy the field or steal the field legally and take it from it, but you can't pick up a field and walk away with it. But a chunk of metal that you call a treasure, a robber could come in and steal it. It's that kind of removable thing. That's an Ayin Dalet. So these Moedym are fixtures of what Yahuwah built into the universe, but as concepts, they're removable. Moedym. How are they removable? Pillaged by an enemy, forsaken by his people. There's a word that means, I forget what it is offhand, but it means cargo or baggage left behind by the caravans. This certain word might even be Ayin Dalet, I can't remember. But the point is, the Oregon Trail, I live here in Oregon City, the end of the Oregon Trail, the official Oregon Trail Interpretive Center is 2 miles down the road here. The Oregon Trail, where for years, hundreds of thousands of people came over on covered wagons across the plains over the Rocky Mountains of the United States and landed right here, right there down the road. That's the spot. A lot of them loaded up everything they had, put them on wagons and started pulling them across, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, but they couldn't carry their stuff. Their animals got weak. The savage weather and other people said, what are you doing on my land? And they started pitching their belongings, abandoning cargo to maybe get to this destination with their life. And even that was lost by many. But the point is to pitch the cargo that is useless, abandoned. It's not worth my life to keep. It wasn't useless. It was important. But I know somebody that went with a metal detector hunting, treasure hunting, you might say, down at the beach once. And according to historical record, this on the beach right here is where the camp was of like Lewis and Clark or somebody. And he's standing here looking at it and go, this would make no sense to camp here. You catch the weather off the ocean, you'd be vulnerable to somebody sneaking up or an animal. This would be a bad place to camp. Where would you camp? He looked around. He thought, well, I'd camp right over there. Maybe there's some rocks and some trees, some type of that's where I would camp if I was a pioneer group. So he went over there with his metal detector and he found a block and tackle from like 100 years ago. It's like, wow, that is where they camped. But now imagine You come all the way across the country with a block and tackle saying, man, I know that I'll need this. We'll be able to lift up beams and move trees and do all kinds of stuff, lift the wagons up from the side of the cliff. Where'd it go? What? Oh, man. And he also found a coin from 150 years ago, whatever it was. He found the block and tackle. That was, somebody had a bad day. They carried that thing all the way across, and were the kids playing with it and lost it? Or did the guy set it down and get distracted and nobody found it ever again until 150 years later? That kind of a thing. I'm just saying, to take something valuable and then lose it, that's the Moedym. It's interesting that that's the meaning of the word. That which is stealable. And Yahuwah made it so. He made it so that the Sabbath day and his festivals could be stolen away, lost. Ancient Jewish customs. Who cares about the Jews? They're going to burn in hell, a bunch of idiots anyway. Because he gave the Jews a nasty, bad reputation. He said, I'm going to make your paramours hate you. They're going to despise you. And I'm going to hedge your way in with thorns, and you're not going to find your way until the end of the curse. 2,730 years later for the northern kingdom brings us to 2010, if we can trust the calendar. Either way, here we are. And here's his stuff. Looks like Paleo-Hebrew. Why? Because paleo, hidden, secret, wonderful, marvelous, beyond expectation, beyond calculation, beyond anything that anybody had noticed. Nobody gave it any regard. Just some screechy, scratchy stuff, some hieroglyphs that the old Canaanites were drawing, and the Canaanites are a bunch of bozos that nobody liked anyway. Really? Yeah, that's the reputation it's carried, but what is it really? It's Yahweh's personal identity. That's what it is. His personal identity and his intent. What do you mean by intent? Oh, this is the story. This is what the pictures say. And this is what the blessing is going to look like. When I bless you guys, this is where it is. And the fact that I can see Yahusha in that narrative story, which the Jews can't, won't, don't. They don't want to. Because they think Jesus Christ is a punk, an infidel, a heretic, an invader of consciousness, a thief of culture. And why they don't like him is because to the Jews, he has stolen away the truth of Yahweh Echad, made him not Echad. And it's like, of course he's still Echad. What's the matter with you guys? No, he's not. That's what's the matter. And if we think there's no difference, we don't get it. Now, when I say there's no difference, for Yeshua to say, I'm not here saying anything out of my own mouth, except I only say what I hear my Father saying, and I do what I see my Father doing. And he went on to say in John 17, in the prayer at Gethsemane, that the glory that he had with the Father before he came here. Now, what does that mean? That means somehow he was in the presence of his Father before he came here. Now, whether you like the theology or not, whether you think the Christians have it going on with the pre-incarnation or not, it's like, listen, if Bereshit starts with the letter bet, and bet means body or house or a container to be in, with, among, through, possibly even against, it's a comparison to be in proximity to another. And if that's the first letter, Bereshit, and Resh is Rosh, the beginning, then there's something about the substance of being a noun, of material, of cosmos, which is this reality. And Aleph is before the bet, but Bereshit starts with the letter bet, so that speaks of a pre-existence, the nature of which is undisclosed because the Aleph is silent. That's a whole thing right there. Bet Gimel Dalet is the word baged, which means to be clothed in disguise, camouflage, deceptive. Ooh, he's going to come and deceive. Come and deceive? Come in disguise, that's a type of deception. A hunter dressed in camouflage, that's a deception. And he came dressed up in his man suit, dressed as a Adam. Yeah, but who is he? He didn't say, I'm your God, you better recognize me or you're all in big trouble. He came saying, I'm the Son of Man. Son, Bet Noon. Bet Noon. The house with life. Bet Yod Noon, understand. Bet Noon Hey, to construct. See, as you start pondering the language, every single word, every single concept can be thunk. Think about it. Personal time. Where do you go with that? Go all over the place. Go wherever. You go word for word, you go letter for letter, you go verse by verse. Start at the beginning, go to the end, open up and jump around in the middle. It's all just thinking about his stuff. Yeah, but how do you know you got the right God? Well, here, look at the Olympics. They have this giant golden head of a bull. Well, they're talking about the stock market, the economy. Are they, or are they talking about Baal? You know, the one represented by the bull. They got this guy dressed in blue on a platter of food. Well, Greek culture, that was a fellow by the name of, well, we're not even supposed to let the names out of our mouth, right? It has something to do with dynamite, you know. But the point is, Yahweh mentions different people's names in the scripture, which we can read. Names mean things. You mention people's names, and that has something to do with stuff. And it's like, listen, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn recently did a talk, and he mentioned their names. If you want to go look it up, if you really, and he says, this is what's going on at the Olympics. They are intentionally reviving the ancient gods and their reputations and their stories, and they're intentionally, like a train running over a drunk on the railroad tracks, they're intentionally rolling over Christianity. Well, why is Christianity got the equivalent metaphor of being a drunk on the railroad tracks? Because Christianity has lost its clout, lost its care, lost its concern. So Rabbi Jonathan Cahn is sitting there giving this talk and saying, you know, us Christians, he's a Messianic Jew, we better wake up. Well, see, my response to that is like, it ain't got nothing to do with the Christians. Is Christianity the great other compared to the Greek and Roman deities? Where's Yahuwah and his Torah? See, as far as I can see, Christianity is just another ism that needs to be swept away. Well, then why don't we? Why don't they? Why isn't there any clarity? Because the sword of truth hasn't come out of Yeshua's mouth yet? Well, if it did come out of Yahusha's mouth, the sword of truth, then there's a verse, forget where it is, that the sword is his word is like a two-edged sword, slicing between bones and marrow. It's like, what is he talking about? The details, the clean distinction between this and that, his word of truth. Well, then what would it look like if Yahusha's in the sky with his angels, his messengers, where the clear truth is being made evident out of his mouth? Well, the clear truth was written with the finger of Elohim. Is the sword coming out of Yahusha's mouth any different? But then to go back to his words, his language, his Moedym, and to realize, well, his Moedym, that's words of truth. And when you regard the Moedym, it's like, hey, let's do some Jewish stuff as well as the Christian stuff. Well, maybe for the first year, that's what you do. maybe even the second year, and then all of a sudden you realize, it's not about the Christian stuff or the Jewish stuff. They're incompatible with Yahuwah's Alephness. Who is he? And all of a sudden, both the Jewish stuff and the Christian stuff get sliced off by the word coming out, the sword coming out of Yahusha's mouth. What comes out of your mouth? Words, language. Is the restoration of this Hebrew language the sword coming out of Yahusha's mouth? Well, that's Revelation 19. Well, what about the tribulation? What about the rapture? I don't know. I don't know about the rapture. I don't know about the tribulation. Now, so if we go back and you look at the book of Revelation, which we were talking about doing, there's a few key things. If you look at principal matters, you got we were hanging around Revelation chapter 7. So you've got the Het Tav Mem, which is the seal of the living God, as it's translated. Elohim Chaim, 144,000. 12 from each of the 12 tribes. Well, what's the number 12? Lamed is the 12th letter. Equivalent, Yod is 10, Kaf is 20, Lamed would be 30. That's what? But the number 12 in Hebrew is written Asher Bet, 10, 2. Well, Asher, Ayin Shin Resh, like 10 commandments, 10 Devarim, means 10, but it also means to be enriched or made wealthy. And then the word for 2 is Bet. The number 2, the second letter, Bet, is 2. So Asher Bet is 10. Is it and 2? Is it plus 2? Asher Bet. Well, the number 12 could be read as the wealth of the house, the wealth of the. See, in English, we have to stick in the and of the, and in Hebrew, it's just wealthy house. That's 12. Yeah, but the letter Lamed is the 12th letter, drawn as a shepherd's staff in the Paleo-Hebrew sort of orthographic motif. Yeah, but what's the shepherd's staff? Teach and learn the Torah? The wealthy house teaching and learning his Torah is the sword coming out of Yeshua's mouth. But the sword coming out of Yeshua's mouth isn't until Revelation 19, and this is Revelation chapter 7. So somebody might look at the book of Revelation and say, well, chronologically, you've got these 6 seals, and then the 7th one are the 7 trumpets, and then the 7th one is the 7 thunders, and then the 7 bowls, and it's almost like this fractal pattern. This is within this, which is within this, which is within this. So is it a spiraling narrative, or is it a sequential? You start in Revelation 1 and you end up in Revelation 22. You kind of got to see it however you want. But here's my point. If he seals in chapter 7, verse 2, with the seal of Elohim Chaim, the Het Tav Mem, well, Het is a fenced-in area. It's a box. It's a container. Tav Mem, like Tomim, is perfect. I could look at, say, the language, the pure language, the Kadesh, sacred, pure, sanctified of him, and the Shafah, Shin Pei Hey. See, people call it Lashon Kodesh, but Lashon, Shin is teeth, which means variation. Shana, the color red, the number 2 means to variegate, the alternative options. So the sacred alternative option is Shana Kodesh, but that's not Hebrew. Hebrew is Shafah, Shin Pei Hey, which is pure, smooth lip. Shafah, there's just one Shafah Kodesh. So I could put that into the container of the Het, and I could look at Het Tav as being that where you stand. It's what's under your feet, as where you're positioned. To be positioned within the pasture of the container of his language. What did he say? What's it mean? What am I supposed to hear and do? If that's Chet Tav Mem, is that the seal of Elohim that's put on the forehead, like the third eye, the pineal gland reference, whether it is or not, that's what's referenced. And then there's the group in chapter 7, verse 14, wash the robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. And then in chapter 8, verse 3, it's talking about the prayers of the Kadoshim Elyonin, which is referenced in Daniel 7. Are these different groups of people? And then there's trumpets. Now in chapter 8, it's like, okay, here come the 7 trumpets. So you get the first 4 of them where a third of the planet gets totally messed up. Trees, grass, sea, rivers, fountains, springs, sun, moon, and stars. That's like it's just pounding days, what he built on days 3, 4, and 5. A third of it all gets just messed up, which is certainly going to affect the other 2/3. And then the 5th trumpet, these locusts come out. Whew! But it says, don't hurt anybody that has the stamp on their forehead. That's in chapter 9, verse 4. Well, then that means the 144,000 are still around. That means the 144,000 that are not supposed to get stung by these locust creatures have endured the first 4 trumpets. Yeah, but I've heard people say, come on, man, the saints are not subject to wrath. The bride of Christ isn't going to catch the just the buffeting, the assault of the weather and the sun and the moon. And the crowd of people that were so many that can't be counted is not the same as the 144,000. But here in chapter 9, verse 4, the 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes written in chapter 7, verse 2 are still around. But you see, up until now, there is no designation of the 12 tribes, each with their stone of luster. So what I'm saying is that one might read it that the people of Israel come back and start making a big issue. Let's say that, is that Revelation 19? Is this part of the circular pattern where Revelation 19 falls into Revelation 7, where the sword coming out of Yeshua's mouth is truth? And the 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes, the Asher Bet, the wealth of the house, because Bet is not just house, but it means to be taught, trained, and domesticated, to be of the house, to really understand who is Yahuwah. What is his relationship as our Abba, as we his children, his Benim? And we finally, for the first time in history ever, just do what he asked, do what he said. And then all these hosts of heaven, the Melachim, are there to facilitate our success. Is that Revelation 19? And that's where all the other people that get exterminated, and then there's a feast of all the birds to feed on their flesh. Is that, say, a third of the world? Is that what happens in chapter 8? I don't know. I'm just saying it's a possibility. But then in chapter 9, verse 15, the 6th, or it's 4 angels are released. That's like day 6. So days 3, 4, and 5 of creation are affected, a third of them, by the first 4 trumpets. Then this other 4 angels are released to kill a third of mankind. That's mankind made on day 6. Chapter 9, verses 20 and 21, he tells us what the problem is. So for all the question of like, why is he doing this? Why does he hate humanity? They worship demons, the idols, the work of their hands. They murder. And what it says is, in the one translation, drug sorcery, which is pharmakia, whoring, and theft. They worship demons, idols. Well, that's everything that the Olympics were showing, besides the sports, but that's what the whole presentation, that's the opening of CERN, that's the opening of that tunnel over there. Murder, pharmakia, whoring, and theft. No, wait a minute, that's American culture. What? What? If that's the opposite, if that's the other, if that's, you might say, the counterpolar extreme opposite to the 144,000, the next thing that happens is chapter 10, verse 4, the seventh trumpet, where 7 thunders or voices, which John was told not to write. Don't record it. And then in chapter 10, verse 7, it says, the secret of Elohim is ended. Ended. That's the translation in the ISR, but what does that mean, that it's ended? Well, to come to an end or be finished is kaf lamed hey, which is the word for bride. But that means also to be maximized to the full. Yod kaf lamed means full power. So the fact that it says the secret of Elohim is ended, is that to say the secret of Elohim is brought to full capacity of power? What's the secret of Elohim? Doesn't tell you. But yet that same phrase is used in Jeremiah 23, verses 8 and 22, which was amad basodi. Amad is that which stands, like columns, paginated, like the meanings of the letters, but basod is that which is underneath, which establishes it to stand, that you can't see, the secret, the foundation. Bet Samik Vav Dalet. And he talks about that a little book that would be sweet in your mouth and bitter in your belly. Memresh, bitter. Finding Yahweh's words. It's like, oh, hey, look at this, what this means. That was me. I was like, wow, these words are so sweet. But yeah, but what does it mean? Well, it means if this is the time of him doing stuff, oh, wait a minute. A third of the sea is going to be turned to blood. A third of all the trees and grass is going to be burned up, dead. A third of mankind is going to perish. Some asteroid's going to come out of the sky and smash down. And hey, what about my sandcastle? It's going to get wrecked. What? Is that the bitterness? Chapter 11, verse 4, the 2 witnesses show up. He says, these are the 2 olive trees, the 2 lampstands. What is the olive tree? Well, the word olive is Zion Yod Tav. This here, Zion Yod, this is my Zion. This is the truth of who Yeshua is. The Jew's going to go, uh-oh. The Christian's going to go, uh-oh. We had him be an Elohim Achrim. Oops. Word tree, Ayin Zadi, to take counsel, to see the Zadding, the flourishing of understanding. This is the reality. This is the reality of the Mashiach. That could be read as olive tree. The one who resurrected, the Zadiying. Do you see? You know who was the one who resurrected? Can you ayin the Zadi? That's the word tree. Zion Yod. Zion is the 7th letter, the crucified one that was thrown into the tomb, Chet, that guy Pezadi, resurrected. Do you see that? That could be seen as the olive tree. There's 2 olive trees. The word 2 is Shana, which is a legal matter is established in the voice of 2 witnesses. At one point on the transfiguration, you had Moshe and Elijah standing next to Yahusha. See, what I'm saying is that I'm just kind of going over these matters pretty quickly, but just reading the words and plugging in these Hebrew concepts is navigating, pondering, meditating on his stuff. And then I don't know how it works. It's just like, just then try to think about it. Just appreciate it. Just look at it. You can look at something and go, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Well, just look at it. Just behold it. Just realize that it's the truth. And you may not know the truth, but you can look at the truth. You don't understand the truth. Do you still work on Saturday? Do you work on the Sabbath day? You might want to stop that. You might understand the truth a little better. Have you ever built a sukkah and hung out in it for a week? Didn't say you had to sleep in it every night. Throw a branch up on the roof. Have you ever built a sukkah? How about you decorate the sukkah with the same zeal or better zeal than you ever did your Christmas decorations, your Valentine's Day, your Halloween ornamentations? Uses colors, blue, purple, red, white. Uses alphabet letters. Uses imagery of menorah. Seem to like pomegranates too. Sukkot being held in the fall, in the autumn, in the time of the harvest. Hey, that's kind of like Thanksgiving. Hey, do the harvest thing. Yom Teruah is all about not just trumpets, shofars, it's making noise. You could have all kinds of musical instruments. How about a theme party of musical instruments and clamoring and shouting and hooray for our side and celebrate Yom Teruah? You don't know how to blow the shofar, just get a piece of paper and go, just a piece of paper. It's not a real shofar. I mean, but the point is, do something because he said so. How do you be his people? And if you don't know which of 3 different days might be the real Yom Teruah, you could do it all 3 days, you know. There's 2 lampstands, the menorah, the 7 branches. What's the number 7? 7 means to swear a vow, Shin Bet Ayin. 7th letter is Zion. Cut off. Yeshua was crucified because we broke the vow. He somehow bought us back in. Resurrected, bringing us with him unto eternal life. There's that. Don't work the first day, don't work the last day. That's the command. You got to work during the week, go ahead. I did that for the first few years, and I realized I'm robbing myself of the most best week of the year. It's kind of like when you're in college and you can take between Christmas and New Year's, take that week off and go some ski trip with your friends up in the mountains, stay in a condo or something. And it's like, hey, that's a great thing to do. That's kind of like keeping the week of Sukkot or the week of unleavened bread. If you don't do it, you're robbing yourself of your own life. Find some friends and do something. Revelation 11, chapter 7, there's a beast coming out of the pit that's going to fight against these 2 and prevail. What the heck? Chapter 11, verse 15 says, the reign of this world has become the reign of our master and Mashiach. Then chapter 11, verse 17, 18, 19 is a vision of heaven. Chapter 12, verse 1 seems to almost start over. A woman clad with the sun, a vision in heaven, the moon under her feet. It's like, what I'm saying is that this is one of those places where it doesn't look like it's necessarily the sequential series of events. That there's all these 7 trumpets, and then all of a sudden starts over with this woman clad with, it's like, what? Chapter 12, verse 4, the dragon throws 1/3 of the stars to earth. Is that the devil taking 1/3 of the angels with him? It doesn't say so, but people have thought that. 12:7, fighting in heaven between Michael and the dragon, who leads the world astray, and the accuser of the brethren. Leads the world astray. So the conflict is, what did Yahweh say? And let's change what he said. That's the dragon. And the accuser, hey, look, he believed me instead of you. That's the only accusation. So see, this all gets down to who is Yahuwah based on what he said. And because he chose the Moedym to be witness and testimony of his identity. The Moedym are not just cultural holidays of the Jews. That's the way they've been presented so they could be taken away. There's something radically significant about Israel waking up and coming back to the Moedym. And the fact that he calls the Moedym Shabbat, Shabbaton, like Sabbath of Sabbaths. Leviticus 23, they're laid out as clearly as any place, more than any place in the Bible, and he calls them, these are his Sabbaths. And so in Deuteronomy 30, when Moshe says, when all these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse, then you will return to these things that I command you today. The word return is Shin Bet Tav, which is the same exact spelling as the word Shabbat. To return to the Shabbat. It's a play on words. The word itself is the word itself. So when you see that, it doesn't say it in English, but it says it in the Hebrew, you realize he allowed his Shabbat to be taken away by the enemy so that we'd have to return to it intentionally. Okay, Same thing with his language. Okay. But see, then the Jews got to do the same thing with Yahusha. He got a bad rap. Well, it wasn't a bad rap. It was a good rap. He's not one of us. He's not our brother. He's an infidel. Look it. He's leading the whole world astray. He can't be Mashiach. No, JC can't be Mashiach. But the real Yahusha, who only says what his father says and does what he sees his father do, and says, my father, my Elohim, your Elohim, he absolutely is Mashiach. And if your rabbi won't tell you that, then now you got to question your rabbi. You get to chapter 12, verse 11, and it says, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Or the word of their testimony is ayin dalet. The word of their testimony. What are they testifying of? They overcame, the word natzak, nun zarichet, spectacular, triumph, overcomer, perpetual, immortalized. Same word, mem nun zarichet is the word for conductor of the symphony. We talked about that word before, but by the blood of the Lamb. I looked that up beginning here, and it actually was dalet mem of shin hey. So shin hey is the word lamb, but yet when I was looking at that other verse, it says the similarity of the blood of the Lamb with the aleph shin resh. Is aleph shin resh the word lamb in Aramaic? Maybe it is, but it's not the word they used here. But the point is, regardless of what word they translated as lamb, that's just the curious study. Guess what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I interpreted the wrong word because it's not written as a interlinear. Doesn't matter. Double check anything I have to say. Every once in a while, there's a slip of the tongue, and I'm thinking this, and I'm saying that, and it's like, hey, check it out for yourself. Don't believe any teacher. Check it out for yourself. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. The point is, what he said, aleph mem resh. The blood is dalet mem, but that also means similarity. To be similar to what he said, that's what Yeshua did. Lamb is shin hey. But you see the word shin is a prefix letter that means that which belongs to, and hey is a suffix letter which is to express or as revealed or communicated. So that which belongs to what was communicated is also the word for lamb, which is basically, hey, do what he said. Do what he said. Do what he said. What did he say? That's his language. Go back to his words. Translate them into a different language. Greek, Latin, English, French, Russian, Chinese. It's different. Sorry, it's not what he said. The word of their testimony. Well, the word is dabar, but dalet bet resh is also according to the stipulations. That which was agreed on. Mount Sinai, the people of Israel said, everything Yahweh says, we will hear and we will do. That's our side of the covenant. His side of the covenant, I'll be your Elohim. I'll be your champion and your defender, offense and defense. I'll make nature cooperate and keep your enemies at bay. Just don't what? Idols, worshiping demons, murder, pharmakia, whoring, and theft. Right there, chapter 9, verses 20 and 21 of Revelation. Well, that's what Ephraim has done all along. That's what Israel has done all along. And then chapter 12, verses 17, similar with chapter 14, verse 2, it says, these are the ones that this is the character attribute of the Kadoshim Elyonim, the saints of the Most High. Those guarding the commands of Elohim and who possess the witness of Yeshua Mashiach. Now, is that, I testify that I believe that Yeshua is the Mashiach? Is that the witness of Mashiach? What's the ayin dalet of Yahusha? He said, I only say what I hear my Father saying, and I only do what I see my Father doing. Well, if the ayin dalet of Yeshua is that testimony, then those who are the ones that prevail in chapter 12, verse 17, and chapter 14, verse 12, those who guard the commands of Elohim, but that's just like Yeshua. What are the commands of Elohim? To sit down in Shabbat, to call on his name, to do justice, righteousness, emet and chesed, truth and kindness. Basically those four things. Honor your parents. And they possess the witness. They possess the ayin dalet. Then the ayin dalet of Yahusha is theirs. That makes it a mem ayin dalet. That makes it a moed. So you might say the greatest, as I can reference right now, the greatest travesty causing travail is for when the Council of Nicaea, Emperor Constantine, the Christian church officially outlawed the Moedym in 325, or it's easy to remember, 321 AD. Yeah, but Yahweh let it happen, caused it to happen, told him to make it happen. Let's say the Holy Spirit led us to cast away the profane customs of the Jews. Why? To keep the curse in force, like he said, 2,730 years. But to possess the witness of Yahusha means that we'd have to start keeping the Moedym. We have to, because that is the object which retains, holds the witness of his identity. Not only the identity is who is Elohim, but the identity is who is the Am, Ayin Mem, the people. Who are the people of Yahweh Zavot? Those who are keeping and experiencing the festive ceremonial engagement, call it, of the feasts of the Moed. And they're starting right now, depending on your calendar, as we started talking about, for this year. If you go to chapter 13, I'm just running through Revelation here real quick. The beast from out of the sea, blasphemy. Blasphemy is that's his great weapon. What's blasphemy? You look it up in the dictionary, and blasphemy means to call profane that which is sacred, or to say the sacred thing is profane. In other words, if I said Christmas, Easter, and Sunday are the holy days, that's blasphemy to Yahuwah. If I say the Jewish holidays, which include Pesach, Passover, and Tabernacles, it's just a bunch of stupid junk, that's blasphemy. If I say the name Yahweh is a name of the Canaanite deity, well, that might be true. There was a Canaanite deity. Why'd they call him that? They must have got it from the Jews or from the Israelites, but yeah, it's only blasphemy if they misinterpret or misrepresent his character and nature. So if I take a custom and stick Yod He Vav He on it, and then pollute the expression of the custom, that's blasphemy. It's not him. See, Yahuwah's identity must be just like what Yeshua said. Every word and every deed of my Father and Elohim. If I change it, it's blasphemy. If I pollute it, it's blasphemy. If I say something else is better than it, or it isn't what it's supposed to be, or replace it with this other stuff, that's blasphemy. And that's the beast from out of the sea. And then chapter 13, verses 6 through 10 and through 15, you talk about the mark of the beast. And then chapter 14:1, talking about the name, the Shem of our Father. So see, the conflict is still, who's your daddy? The Shem of our Abba somehow is retained in the Moedym. So the mark of the beast versus the mark on the forehead of those who belong to Yahweh, the 144,000, seems like it has something to do with the Moedym, because that's the thing that's retaining his identity. This is the package of purity, the chet of Tav Mem. The word het Tav Mem, it means seal or insignia. To be signed up for a subscription for a period of time. Israel signed itself up for a curse lasting 2,730 years because they went whoring after Elohim Achrim. And the only way to come back to Yahweh is to come back and Shabbat to his Shabbat, which is Leviticus 23, which includes the Moedym. That's the only way to prove, the bear witness that we're listening to his voice, is to keep the Moedym. So I'm saying, regardless of your calendar, find a way to keep the Moedym. If I'm listening. And then to say, I want to hear, but I don't know how to hear. I can't seem to hear. Command me to hear. Say to me, Shema Israel, would you please? Shema Israel. There's a prophetic voice. And then in chapter 14, verse 5, no falsehood. And chapter 14, verse 8, Babylon is fallen. You see, this sequence of events is the return of Israel to listen. Is this pushing the rock off the top of the mountain, which caused the avalanche, which destroys the entire infrastructure of Babylon. And then you got chapter 15, verse 2, those overcoming the beast, his image, the mark, and the number are standing on the sea of glass with harps singing about his chesed. Hodu la'Yuah ki tov, ki le'olam chesed, chazdo, his chesed. They're singing the song of Moses. They're singing about his chesed, which is the one word of the purest reference of his character and nature. He said of his people, you ticked me off something fierce. I was so mad. He wrecked everything. He said he put this garden and planted and put his people in there, and his people got him so mad he just ripped the garden apart, tore it all down, let the wild animals come in and ravage it. And he says, I was only a little bit mad. What? A little bit mad compared to how mad my expression is going to be when you return to me and I pour out my wrath on your enemies, those I allowed to ravage you. How does that part of the story fit into the rapture and tribulation? Rapture? He's taking us out of here? Chapter 16, verse 7 talks about the bowls of wrath, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, yee. That's... But see, it's all the way up into chapter 15, verse 2 that he's talking about those who overcome the beast, his image, his mark, and number, singing about Yahuwah's chesed. See, that's this ideal reference of, do you know who he is and what he's about? Yeah, he can get perturbed. Yeah, he has brought in destruction, wiped out his own people to the point where Moshe said, Abraham said, and somebody else also was saying, are you going to destroy all of Israel? Really? And then he goes on to say, oh gosh, if you guys can never figure out how vast is the heavens or what's found, how's the earth established, then maybe then, if you could never figure that out, then maybe I would do away with Israel completely. But you ain't going to figure it out, and I'm never going to do away with Israel completely. But see, for us to go, let's just sneak in with that, it's like, don't you want to be the one he says, this is my people. This is my Israel. The object of his dreams, of his fantasy imagination. For why does the universe exist anyway? To have this people. talking to somebody earlier in the week, and they said, if that's true, then how can we be entertained by going to Disneyland? How can we be entertained going to the Renaissance Fair or going to see a concert where they're just glorifying any stupid decadence? Isn't that feasting at the wrong table? Isn't that like going to the altars of the Elohim Achrim? If we want to hear his pure tone of truth, and yet we turn and fill our ears and our minds and our hearts with the sacrilege of the Elohim Achrim, isn't that going up to their altars and capitulating our stand and to frolic with the infidels as they're worshiping their false god that he hates? Are we compromising our own potential by thinking that stuff is entertaining or funny or cute or clever or whatever it might be? Artistic? Yeah! For me to mention the other week that I had some inclination to appreciate the art of Tim Burton, it's like, how dare you validate that? It's like, what, did I validate that? Well, yeah, you did. It's like, wow, gosh darn it. Well, as an artist, I think there's something to that it is kind of interesting. It's like, really? Sugar-coated skulls? The fact they're sugar-coated means that it's like, isn't that death? Is he Elohim Chaim, or are you gonna, can you sprinkle a little toxic mercury on my cornflakes, please? Really? You know what that's gonna do to you? It's shiny. Sorry, I don't mean to offend by validating toxicity. What a shameful thing. Being honest with the intrigue of certain things, but it's like, okay, if your hand offends, you cut it off and enter into life one-handed instead of two. If your eye offends, you pluck it out instead of entering into life with both eyes. Entering into death with both eyes, entering into life with one. It's like, really? If I find a certain style of art to be intriguing, then I better pluck out my eye. Yikes. How do we facilitate this stuff happening these days? You know, there was a guy on the internet that said, well, a lot of people aren't going to see 2025. What? Yeah, people die all the time. Well, when those locusts come out of the pit, people are going to try to find death and they won't be able to do it. For 5 months, they're going to be suffering. And it's like, can you imagine not being able to die for 5 months? I mean, people die on the face of the earth every day, but they're not going to be able to die for 5 months. There's going to be a lot of people that are wishing they didn't have to endure this stuff. But what I'm saying is, why would somebody get on the internet and say they have stuff planned, or maybe we're at some place in the book of Revelation where, oh, you may think, well, next year, a month from now, next year, well, we'll do this in December. Oh, you may not have December. In fact, this season of the Moedym may be the last, the one and only, the first and ever chance before stuff happens that you don't even want to imagine. Hey, but today we can plan for the Moed of Sukkot and Shemini Atzeret the day after. You got 4 of them coming up. Yom Teruah, the first day of the 7th month. Is it the sliver or the full moon? Take your pick. Do them both if you want. I have numerous times, but whatever. 10 days later, Yom Teruah. Yom Kippur. First day, Yom Teruah, then 10 days later, Yom Kippur. From the evening of the 9th until the evening of the 10th, afflict yourself, whether you eat, whether you drink. Some people don't. Some people say that's not what it means, but it means attend to Yahweh's stuff. Focus of all your attention. And then 5 days later, from the 15th to the 21st is Sukkot, and then Shemini Atzeret, the 22nd day of the 7th month, the 8th day of Sukkot. Don't work that day. Don't use that as the day to hop in your car and drive away, I would suggest. Keep it as it's the pinnacle day, the Rosh, the summit day of the year, the zenith, Shemini Atzeret. Shemini is the word oil. Atzeret is stop. Stop and get oil? Gee, what if Shemini Atzeret was the day to collect the oil to have in your lamp, so that when he does have that event, metaphorically, the bridegroom coming back and hearing the trumpets and saying, let's go and do you have oil? Just what if, just a little, that were those who just kept Shemini Atzeret? Would that be enough incentive to keep Shemini Atzeret? Just saying. Anyway, we're at time to quit. So we should end it here.
Hallelujah, Abba. Abba, we praise thee once again. There's nothing but thanks and love and appreciation for all that thou art showing us, Father. We thank thee for showing us that there is more to what we've been told than what we've been given. We ask, Abba, that thou would be our lamed, our guide to finding what thou hast for each and every one of us, and also like to have us just be in awe, because that is what thou produces, is just love and awe and admiration when we find ourselves in the same camp, coming from different venues, because we have followed thy word. We praise thee, Abba, Behashem, Yosha. Amen.
Amen.